My name is Roosevelt, and I am 28 years old. I have spent the last 8 years of my life working at my family's auto repair shop in Amarillo, Texas, believing with every fiber of my being that this business would one day be mine. From sunrise to sunset, I poured my heart into Henderson Auto Repair, transforming it from a struggling local shop into a thriving enterprise. Today, I just signed the biggest contract in our company's history, worth $180,000 over 2 years. I should be celebrating, but instead, I am sitting here in complete shock because my father just delivered news that has shattered everything I thought I knew about my future. Before I tell you about the worst day of my life, could you let me know where you are watching from? Please hit that like button if you have ever felt betrayed by the people closest to you. Subscribe to hear more real stories from life. Now let me take you back to the day I realized that 8 years of sacrifice meant absolutely nothing. I was born into a family with deep roots in the automotive business. My father, Frank Henderson, opened Henderson Auto Repair back in 1985 in our small city of Amarillo, Texas. What started as a one-bay operation grew into a respected local business over the decades. My mother, Patricia, handled all the bookkeeping and administrative duties, making it truly a family enterprise. Growing up weekends meant one thing in the Henderson household time at the shop. While other kids were playing video games or watching cartoons, I was learning the difference between a socket wrench and a box end wrench. The smell of motor oil became as familiar to me as my mother's perfume. My father would lift me up to peer into engine bays, explaining how pistons moved and what made engines purr. "Son," he would say, his hands black with grease one day, "all of this will be yours. You are going to carry on the Henderson legacy." Those words became the foundation of every decision I made growing up. In high school, while my classmates dreamed of college degrees in business or engineering, I focused entirely on automotive technology. I graduated from our local community college with a certificate in automotive repair finishing at the top of my class. Toyota dealership in Dallas offered me a position starting at $45,000 a year, but I turned it down without hesitation. My future was already decided, and it was right here in Amarillo. The day I officially started working at Henderson Auto Repair, my father shook my hand with pride in his eyes. "Welcome to the business, son. I am not going to pay you a regular salary just yet, because every dollar we reinvest now will be yours later. Think of this as investing in your own future." I received a modest weekly allowance for gas and personal expenses, but Frank was right. I was not just working for the business, I was building my inheritance. Those 8 years flew by in a blur of 12-hour days and weekend shifts. I threw myself into every aspect of the operation. When I noticed we were losing customers to newer shops with online presence, I taught myself web design and created our first website. I set up our Facebook page and implemented an online appointment booking system that increased our efficiency by 30%. I negotiated contracts with 3 local taxi companies, securing steady fleet maintenance work that provided reliable monthly income. The real breakthrough came when I convinced my father to expand into commercial vehicle maintenance. I researched every logistics company within 50 miles of Amarillo and personally visited their facilities. My persistence paid off when I landed maintenance contracts with several trucking companies. Under my initiatives, our annual revenue climbed from $150,000 to over $400,000 by my 7th year. Throughout this period, my younger brother Danny was living a completely different life. 4 years my junior, he graduated from University of Texas at Austin with a business administration degree and immediately moved to the city to work for a tech company doing marketing. Danny rarely came home, maybe 3 or 4 times a year for holidays. He showed zero interest in the family business and often made jokes about getting his hands dirty. "That is Roosevelt's thing," he would say whenever anyone asked if he might join the shop. "I am more of a suit and tie guy." This arrangement suited me perfectly. Danny was building his career in Austin, and I was building mine in Amarillo. There was no competition, no conflict of interest. The succession plan seemed obvious to everyone who knew our family. Customers regularly asked me when I would officially take over, and I would smile and say, "Soon enough." Local suppliers started addressing me as the future owner. Everything pointed toward a natural transition that would happen when Frank decided to retire. By my 8th year, I was essentially running the day-to-day operations, while Frank focused on the big picture and customer relations. I had started making plans for expansion scouting locations for a potential second bay and researching equipment financing options. The future looked brighter than ever, and I felt confident that all my sacrifices were about to pay off in the biggest way possible. Everything began to shift after I successfully negotiated the contract with Panhandle Logistics. This was the deal I had been chasing for almost 2 years. Panhandle operated 45 trucks running routes throughout Texas, Oklahoma, and New Mexico. Their previous maintenance provider had let them down repeatedly, causing costly breakdowns and delayed shipments. I spent months building a relationship with their fleet manager, proving that Henderson Auto Repair could handle their complex needs. When I finally signed that $180,000 contract for 2 years of exclusive maintenance service, I expected my father to be over the moon. This single deal represented nearly half of our annual revenue and would establish us as the premier commercial vehicle service center in the Texas Panhandle. Instead, Frank simply nodded and said, "Good job, son." No celebration dinner, no acknowledgement of the months of work it took to land this account. His reaction felt surprisingly cold. Around the same time, Danny started showing up at home more frequently. After 6 months of absence, he suddenly appeared one weekend without any advance notice. This was unusual, because Danny always called ahead to let us know he was coming. When I asked about his sudden appearance, he gave vague answers about needing a break from city life and wanting to spend time with family. Something about his explanation did not ring true. Over the next few weeks, I began noticing strange behavior from both my parents. I would walk into rooms where my father and Danny were having quiet conversations, and they would immediately stop talking when I appeared. When I asked what they were discussing, Frank would wave it off with, "Just business stuff, son. Nothing for you to worry about." But the frequency of these private conversations was unsettling. My mother, Patricia, who had always been my strongest supporter in the family, started acting differently around me. She avoided making eye contact during family dinners and seemed constantly worried about something. When I tried to ask her if everything was okay, she would just pat my shoulder and say, "Everything is fine, honey, just fine." The breaking point came when I accidentally discovered Danny meeting with our family accountant, Mr. Wilson, at a coffee shop downtown. I had stopped by to grab lunch when I spotted them in a corner booth, surrounded by financial documents I did not recognize. When I walked over to say hello, both men looked startled and quickly shuffled the papers into a briefcase. Danny's explanation that they were just catching up did not explain why our accountant looked so uncomfortable. That evening, I decided to address the elephant in the room directly. During dinner, I brought up the subject of business succession. "Dad, I have been thinking that maybe it is time we start formalizing the transition process. I could take some business management courses to prepare better for when you are ready to step back." Frank's response was evasive and concerning. "We will talk about that soon, Roosevelt. There are some complicated things I need to figure out first." The way he said complicated made my stomach drop. What could possibly be complicated about passing the business to the son who had dedicated 8 years of his life to building it? Later that week, I noticed legal documents sticking out of my mother's purse with the header estate, Planning Services. I did not feel comfortable confronting her directly about it, but the pieces were starting to form a picture I did not want to see. Something significant was happening behind my back, and everyone in my family was part of it except me. The call came on a Monday morning in late September. I was underneath a Ford F-150, replacing the transmission fluid when my phone rang. Frank's voice sounded more serious than I had ever heard it. "Roosevelt, I need you to come to the office right away. We have something important to discuss." The tone made my hands shake as I wiped the grease off and headed toward the small office building attached to our main shop. When I opened the office door, Danny was already seated across from my father's desk, wearing a pressed button-down shirt and khakis that looked completely out of place in our blue-collar environment. Spread across the desk were legal documents, financial statements, and what appeared to be a comprehensive business proposal bound in a professional presentation folder. My mother sat in the corner chair, her hands folded tightly in her lap, refusing to meet my eyes. Frank gestured for me to sit down in the remaining chair. The silence in the room was suffocating. Finally, he cleared his throat and spoke the words that would change my life forever. "Son Patricia and I have made a decision about the future of Henderson Auto Repair. After careful consideration and many long discussions, we have decided that Danny will be taking over the business." The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt dizzy, as if all the oxygen had been sucked out of the room. "What do you mean Danny will be taking over?" I managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. Frank opened the presentation folder and began explaining his reasoning. "Danny has a business degree from a respected university. He understands marketing, financial planning, and strategic growth in ways that, frankly, Roosevelt, you just do not. You are incredible with your hands, and you know engines better than anyone I have ever met. But running a business requires different skills." Danny finally spoke up, and his voice carried a confidence I had never heard from him before. "Roosevelt, I have been working on a comprehensive modernization plan for Henderson Auto Repair. We are talking about digital transformation, expanded service offerings, and a growth strategy that could turn this single location into a regional automotive services company." He slid a thick document across the desk toward me. As I flipped through the pages, I realized with growing horror that every idea I had ever shared with my family was documented in this proposal, but presented as Danny's vision. The online booking system I had implemented, the commercial fleet services I had developed, the expansion plans I had discussed over family dinners, everything was there, repackaged and professionally formatted, as if Danny had conceived it all. "I have been consulting with business development specialists in Austin," Danny continued, "and they agree that Henderson Auto Repair has tremendous untapped potential, but it needs leadership that understands modern business practices and market positioning." Frank nodded approvingly at his younger son. "Danny has the education and the vision to take this company to the next level. Roosevelt, you have done excellent work here, and we are not ungrateful. That is why we are offering you the position of head mechanic with a salary of $65,000 per year. That is excellent money for this area, and you would have job security for life." The offer felt like salt in an open wound. I would be working as an employee in the business I had spent 8 years building, taking orders from my younger brother, who had never changed a single oil filter. "Let me get this straight," I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "You want me to work for Danny in the shop that I helped build from the ground up?" "This is not personal, Roosevelt." Danny interjected, his tone irritatingly patronizing. "This is just business. You are amazing at fixing cars, but I can grow this business beyond anything you ever imagined. We are talking about opening 5 locations within 3 years, building Henderson Auto into a regional brand." My mother finally spoke from her corner chair. "Honey, your father believes this is what is best for the family business. Danny has such wonderful ideas for expansion." Her voice was barely audible, and I could tell she was struggling with the decision as much as I was. "Wonderful ideas," I exploded. "These are my ideas. I am the one who built the website, landed the commercial contracts, and increased revenue by almost 300%. And now, you are telling me to take orders from someone who has never spent a day working in this shop?" Frank's expression hardened. "That attitude right there is exactly why Danny is the right choice for leadership. You think like a mechanic, Roosevelt, not like a CEO. Danny sees the bigger picture beyond just fixing individual cars. Danny opened his laptop and launched into a slick presentation about Henderson Auto Group, complete with projected revenue charts and expansion timelines. Every slide felt like a knife twisting in my back. He talked about leveraging digital marketing, optimizing operational efficiency, and developing strategic partnerships, all concepts I had discussed with the family, but never had the formal education to present so professionally. "The numbers do not lie," Roosevelt Danny said, pointing to a projected revenue chart showing growth to over $2 million within 5 years. Under traditional management, this business has reached its ceiling. Under strategic leadership, we can build something that will support the entire Henderson family for generations. I looked around the room at the 3 people who were supposed to love me most in the world. My father sat behind his desk, with arms crossed, looking more like a corporate executive than the man who had taught me to change my first tire. My mother stared at her hands, unable to face the son she was helping to betray. My brother looked triumphant, as if he had just won a competition I did not even know we were having. You know what? I stood up from my chair, my decision crystallizing in that moment. Keep your business. Keep your 5-year plans and your strategic partnerships. I am done. I walked toward the door, then turned back for one final statement. Danny, you might have a business degree, but you do not have 8 years of relationships with our customers. You do not know which suppliers give us the best prices or which mechanics in town we can trust for overflow work. Good luck learning all of that from a textbook. As I left the office, I heard my mother call my name, but I did not turn around. I had spent 8 years building something I thought would be mine, only to discover I was never really part of the family business at all. I was just cheap labor with a false promise of inheritance. Walking out of that office was the hardest and most liberating thing I had ever done. I drove straight home to the small apartment I rented near the shop and began packing my belongings. There was no point in staying in Amarillo to watch my brother run the business I had built into the ground. Within a week, I had loaded everything I owned into my pickup truck and headed east toward Dallas. The decision to leave for Dallas was not random. During my years at Henderson Auto Repair, I had built relationships with parts, suppliers, and industry contacts throughout Texas. Several had mentioned opportunities in the Dallas-Fort Worth metroplex, where the automotive service industry was booming due to rapid population growth and economic expansion. I figured if I was going to start over, I might as well do it in a place with real opportunities. Finding an apartment in Dallas on short notice and a limited budget was challenging, but I eventually secured a small one-bedroom place in Garland for $800 a month. It was a far cry from the spacious house I had planned to inherit, but it was mine, and nobody could take it away from me based on arbitrary family politics. My first priority was finding employment. I applied to several automotive service chains and independent shops throughout the DFW area. My resume was strong: 8 years of experience, expertise in both domestic and foreign vehicles, and a track record of customer satisfaction and business growth. Within 2 weeks, I had multiple job offers to choose from. Metro Auto Solutions offered me the most attractive package, $78,000 annually, plus performance bonuses, health insurance, and 2 weeks of paid vacation. This was actually more money than my father had offered me to work under Danny, and it came with the respect of being hired based on my qualifications rather than family obligation. I accepted immediately. Working at Metro Auto Solutions was a revelation. For the first time in my career, I was part of a truly professional operation with standardized procedures, ongoing training programs, and advancement opportunities based on merit rather than family connections. My supervisor, Marcus Williams, was a 15-year industry veteran who became both a mentor and friend. He taught me business skills that I had never learned working in my father's informal environment. Within 6 months, I had become one of Metro's top-performing technicians. My efficiency ratings were consistently above 95%, and my customer satisfaction scores were among the highest in the company. More importantly, I was learning about business operations from a completely different perspective. Metro operated 12 locations across DFW, and I got to see how successful automotive businesses functioned at scale. The experience opened my eyes to possibilities I had never considered while trapped in the family business mindset. Sarah Chen, Metro's marketing coordinator, became another valuable mentor who taught me about digital marketing, customer retention strategies, and market analysis. Through conversations with her, I began to understand that my instincts about business growth had been correct all along, but I had lacked the formal framework to implement them effectively. After a year at Metro, I started noticing a gap in the Dallas automotive service market. Busy professionals in the Metroplex were struggling to find time for vehicle maintenance during traditional business hours. Many were paying premium prices for basic services simply because they could not take time off work to visit conventional shops. This observation sparked an idea that would change my life completely. I began researching mobile automotive service businesses and discovered that this was a rapidly growing segment of the industry. Companies that brought high-quality automotive services directly to customers' homes and offices were thriving in major metropolitan areas across the country. Dallas, with its sprawling geography and time-pressed workforce, seemed like an ideal market for this type of service. Over several months, I developed a comprehensive business plan for Roosevelt's Mobile Auto Care. The concept was simple but powerful: provide dealership-quality automotive maintenance and repair services at customers' locations, eliminating the inconvenience and time loss associated with traditional shop visits. I would target busy professionals, elderly customers who had difficulty traveling, and corporate clients who needed fleet maintenance without operational disruption. The startup costs were significant but manageable. I needed a properly equipped service van, professional-grade tools, insurance coverage, business licensing, and working capital to sustain operations during the initial growth phase. Using my savings from Metro Auto Solutions, a small business loan and investment from Marcus Williams, who believed in my vision, I was able to launch Roosevelt's Mobile Auto Care in the spring of my third year in Dallas. The response exceeded my wildest expectations. Within the first month, I was booked solid with oil changes, brake services, battery replacements, and diagnostic work. Word-of-mouth referrals began generating more business than I could handle alone. By month 6, I hired my first employee, another experienced technician, who shared my commitment to quality service. The mobile model offered advantages I had not fully anticipated. Customers loved the convenience, but they also appreciated the transparency of watching their vehicles being serviced. There was no mystery about what work was being performed or whether it was actually necessary. This transparency built trust and customer loyalty much faster than traditional shop-based services. By the end of my first year in business, Roosevelt's Mobile Auto Care had generated $380,000 in revenue. More importantly, I had built something entirely my own, based on my ideas, my relationships, and my reputation. No family politics, no competing agendas, just honest work rewarded fairly. During this period, I occasionally heard updates about Henderson Auto Repair through mutual contacts in the industry. The news was not encouraging for Danny's leadership. Panhandle Logistics had canceled their contract after 6 months due to poor service quality and missed deadlines. 2 of our most experienced mechanics had quit to work for competitors. Customer complaints had increased significantly, and revenue was declining rapidly. About 2 years after I left Amarillo, my father called me for the first time since our confrontation in his office. His voice sounded tired and defeated. "Roosevelt, I think I might have made a mistake with the business transition. Danny is struggling more than I expected. Would you consider coming back to work something out, maybe as partners?" The irony of the situation was not lost on me. Frank was now asking me to rescue the business that he had decided I was not qualified to inherit. I listened politely to his proposal, but declined respectfully. "Dad, I appreciate the call, but I have built something good here in Dallas. I am not interested in going backward." What I did not tell him was that Roosevelt's Mobile Auto Care had grown to 12 service vehicles, 20 employees, and over $1.2 million in annual revenue. I had contracts with 3 major corporations for fleet maintenance and a waiting list of individual customers. The business I had built from scratch in 3 years was larger and more profitable than Henderson Auto Repair had ever been, even during its best years. The experience taught me that being rejected by my family was actually the best thing that ever happened to my career. If Frank had given me the business as promised, I would have been constrained by his limited vision and small-town thinking. Being forced to start over gave me the freedom to think bigger and build something truly my own. I learned to forgive my family for their decision not because they were right, but because holding on to resentment was limiting my own growth. Frank made his choice based on what he thought was best at the time, even though it was short-sighted and hurtful. Danny took advantage of an opportunity which I might have done in his position. My mother was caught between her husband and her sons, an impossible situation with no good options. The most valuable lesson from this experience is that your worth is not determined by other people's recognition of your abilities. I had spent 8 years seeking validation from my father and assuming that family approval was necessary for success. When that approval was withdrawn, I discovered that I had always possessed the skills and determination needed to succeed. I just needed the motivation to use them independently. Today, Roosevelt's Mobile Auto Care employs 32 people across 15 service vehicles. We serve the entire Dallas-Fort Worth metroplex and have expansion plans for Houston and San Antonio. My annual personal income is more than 10 times what my father offered me to work under Danny. More importantly, I wake up every day knowing that everything I have accomplished is the result of my own efforts and decisions. Sometimes the people closest to us cannot see our true potential because they are stuck seeing us as we used to be rather than who we have become. When my father chose Danny over me, he did not just lose a son, he lost the person who best understood his business and had the passion to grow it. But I gained something more valuable, the knowledge that I do not need anyone's permission to succeed. I used to think inheritance was about what others give you. Now I know that true inheritance is what you build for yourself. My father taught me how to fix engines, but life taught me how to fix my own future. That lesson is worth more than any family business could ever be. If you are watching this and feeling overlooked by the people who should believe in you, most remember that your worth is not determined by their vision of you. Sometimes you have to walk away from the table to realize you were never really invited to sit there in the first place. But when you build your own table, you get to decide who deserves a seat. Have you ever been passed over for something you felt you deserved by the people closest to you? How did you handle the situation, and what did you learn from it? Share your story in the comments below because I would love to hear how others have overcome similar challenges. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming adversity and building success on your own terms. Share this video with someone who might need to hear that their value is not determined by other people's recognition. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it inspires you to never give up on your dreams, even when the people who should support you most choose not to. Remember, sometimes the best inheritance is the one you create for yourself.